And also just another interesting point. Um, so really interestingly, and I think Naokimi doesn't really do a good enough job of promoting this about himself, but you know, there's the internal aspect of doing the work for the church, and then there's the external realities of like supporting your family, right? And that's something that he's always known about, and he's talked a lot about. If you ever get a chance to talk to him personally, it's something that he's talked a lot about. And so he actually developed a side hustle that supports him financially and doubles his income, and it covers for what, working for the church doesn't. And, he does so well for himself that he owns a Tesla. So,
Interesting.
um, yeah, I think people who want to work for the church, you you love God and you love people and you do it for those reasons, and you kind of figure out other ways to support yourself. And um, I don't think it's healthy when your whole life is kind of completely dependent. I think that there needs to be a
Hmm.
balance. For me, my life of faith has always been about balance, internal and external.
Right. But then it leads to the point where like but then you're only attracting people who really want to be here, right? And they might not be the most qualified or whatever. So like if you want the most qualified people to be working at headquarters because they're super talented and you want to expand the church or whatever and do good things, right? And grow the movement, then shouldn't we be hiring the most qualified people? And so what would their
Oh,
incentive be if it's
absolutely.
always like this? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. We should definitely hire people who are qualified. But, so I worked for 5 years at the US Department of State. I worked at the US Embassy in London. And there's an interesting distinction in hiring process. There's locally employed staff, or LES, who are people that they just hire from whatever country the embassy is based in. And then you have the diplomatic staff, which are dispatched from the United States to come over. And, the local staff, they are, um, you hire them for their skill set, right? But you hire them to execute the job. And the diplomatic staff ultimately are responsible for strategy, for figuring out the best way of doing things, for how to advance the purposes of the mission. Um, and so I kind of see it the same way. The people who are in those leadership positions, the ones that have the vision and the idea of where we want to be like moving forward as a movement, those are the people who really should be figuring out on, the broader level. And then you hire the best possible people to execute that. Even in Korea, Eyepiece TV, they have a lot of staff who are not church members.
Right,
They,
right. I understand what you're
yeah,
saying, but it doesn't.
yeah.
I feel like you're saying one thing, but we're not doing the other thing, right? What I'm trying to say is, are there plans to do that in the church for like, because a lot of people do love the movement, and a lot of people do want to pursue something, right? But then there's oftentimes not enough incentive, right? And not everyone can afford to do a side hustle, or it's people are one track minded, and they were like, I really want to work for headquarters, right? And I like that's the way I want to serve. So it's like, so what do you think headquarters could do to make it more you know attractive or lucrative or incentive based to come
Yeah.
and offer their talent?
So I do think that as a movement, we do have to move out of this kind of volunteer work and just focused on ourselves kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality. And we really have to do better at actually serving the world, like actually making a difference in our communities. And I think that when we start to make a bigger impact in communities and in the world, that's when you start to attract the attention of other people. You get more support. You partner with other organizations, and then money comes. The three great blessings are to be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. And, True Father's words have always said that if you master the first blessing, you master the second blessing, then the third blessing will come. Money will follow you where you go if you live that principled life. So I think that um, I think we're still figuring it out, but we are definitely working on how to increase revenue streams, and so that we're not dependent on donations from businesses, donations from members. You know, there has to be additional support. People need to look at us and say, wow, what you do is really valuable. What you guys believe, I can really learn something. And so instead of us being insecure and like, here, I'm going to teach you DP and everything and give away all the secrets for free, then suddenly we become like Tony Robbins and we're charging like $3,000 to get the diamond class seats in the stadium
Right,
for the
right.
education.
Mm-hmm. So another question I have is what's
Hold on,
headquarters up to?
before we move topics, I just want to acknowledge that for me, our family, both of my parents worked for headquarters for most of my life, and I remember at some point during Ingenim's reign of glory or terror, depending on how you see it, um, my dad was let go from his like 20-year position or something like that, and suddenly, we're left. My parents are close to retirement age, um, with no real source of income and no real skills because they dedicated their entire life to supporting the church since they were really young. And then it's just like, oh, well, now the Providence is moving on to a new direction. And it was really exciting for the church because it was like, oh, we're getting rid of all the old leaders and we're getting new young blood. And it's like, yeah, I totally agree with that. That's the correct direction to go. I don't necessarily think my father's leadership was the best way to go for the rest of, his life. Let's just keep him in that position because of his service. But there definitely wasn't a professional respect. And well, I don't know what I'm kind of excuse, but the explanation we got was, well, the church only has so much money, and we do want to compensate the new people who are serving, and da da da. And it's like it makes sense on paper, but then you got to think. True Mother lives in a palace, guys, and it ain't cheap to live in a palace. Like, it's not just the electric bill alone. It's so it's like there there is money, and it's going somewhere. Um, so I think it's hard because it's like there's all these things where you say, oh, well, the church, we can't afford this, we can't afford that, like, everyone please donate and stuff. And then it's like, well, where is the money really heading, or how is it really being distributed? Because it seems somehow a little confusing. It's like Chungpyung's constantly getting updates and getting bigger, and it's like turning into a micro city,
Mm-hmm.
which is great, because you can go there and you can see, and it's going to be a monument and a museum to our faith, and all of that I support. But it's hard to see that and then also go, oh, but we can't afford to support our members on the local level because there just isn't enough money. And it's like, well, maybe if you weren't covering things in gold in a palace somewhere, there would be.
So what's your question?
I mean, money management is different though, because there's international headquarters, there's local, I mean, country headquarters and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to defend what we do, but I'm saying it's a lot more complex than you think, and we can't just blame a single source.
And I mean, I'll also say that there's an internal component to that too, you know. I think if you do you really believe that true parents are the Messiah, right? And what does that mean? And then what does that mean for how we should treat them? And I'm not trying to justify necessarily all of those decisions, because I don't know the reasons behind those decisions entirely. You know, a lot of that happens, like Toya was saying, in Korea. In America, we do not have much input on that, you know. But I think there are any number of things that are going to challenge you in your life of faith, right? Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily just the church organization's responsibility to take care of all of the people, though. I think that we all collectively have some kind of responsibility to take care of each other, you know. Just like I feel responsible to take care of my parents too, that, my husband and I are always talking about, like, what are we going to do when they retire? Who's going to take care of them? What happens if they become ill? How are we going to look after them? Yeah. And maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
why he feels really motivated to earn money to, do all of those things.